Hey, my friends, we will be right back to the show. But I have a question for you. Are you struggling with the impact of childhood trauma? Well, know that you're not alone. I'm here to let you know that I'm starting a brand new weekly coaching group that includes a year of life coaching, accountability, support, habit and goal setting, and more. I'm starting a waitlist for the group right now, and I'm only taking a handful of people. And I'll let you know that through this personalized coaching, we'll work together to help you understand how your childhood trauma has shaped your beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and will help you create a roadmap for healing and growth. Right now, you can schedule an absolutely free coaching session with me and get put on the wait list if you go to thinkunbroken.com. My friends, it's your time to turn your trauma into triumph, breakdowns into breakthroughs, and become the hero of your own story. And I'm here to support you in doing that. Just go to thinkunbroken.com to register for a free coaching call with me and to get put on the wait list for the brand new weekly coaching program. We'll be right back to the show. But before we do, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, factormeals.com, where if you go to factormeals.com/unbroken50 and use the code unbroken50, you can get 50% off your first order. That's factormeals.com/unbroken50. If you're like me and you are a person who is busy trying to create a life, heal, work on their health, wealth, and relationships, and not to mention deal with the day-to-days of normal life, you do not have time to be going to the grocery store and trying to figure out what you're going to cook every single day of the week. In fact, one time I did the math and I realized I was spending over 15 hours a week at the grocery store and cooking. When I added Factor, I got to use that time for myself, for my family, for my friends, for my community, and for my business. And so if you're in the place where you need some more support in the kitchen, head to factormeals.com/unbroken50 and use the code unbroken50 to get 50% off.
Do you ever feel like life is a never-ending series of lessons while you try to find purpose, meaning, and answers? I am Vanessa Fontana, the host of Figuring Shit Out, a podcast where we undertake self-help, coming of age, and healing. As I live my 20s in New York City figuring shit out myself, I've realized that if you spend your whole life trying to get your act together, you don't have a life. You have an act. On Figuring Shit Out, every Sunday, you get to normalize the journey of not knowing and be guided into living your life with more intention and ease.
Hey, my friends, we will be right back to the show. But I have a question for you. Are you struggling with the impact of childhood trauma? Well, know that you're not alone. I'm here to let you know that I'm starting a brand new weekly coaching group that includes a year of life coaching, accountability, support, habit and goal setting, and more. I'm starting a waitlist for the group right now, and I'm only taking a handful of people. And I'll let you know that through this personalized coaching, we'll work together to help you understand how your childhood trauma has shaped your beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and will help you create a roadmap for healing and growth. Right now, you can schedule an absolutely free coaching session with me and get put on the wait list if you go to thinkunbroken.com. My friends, it's your time to turn your trauma into triumph, breakdowns into breakthroughs, and become the hero of your own story. And I'm here to support you in doing that. Just go to thinkunbroken.com to register for a free coaching call with me and to get put on the wait list for the brand new weekly coaching program. If you've ever had thoughts about suicide, this is an episode that you're going to want to listen to. If you've ever had thoughts about whether or not someone in your family has been incestuous, this is an episode that you're going to want to listen to. If you ever had thoughts that you might be addicted to substances, drugs, sex, video games, this is an episode that you're going to want to listen to. What's up, Unbroken Nation? I'm very excited to be back with you with another episode. And today's guest is Paul Gilmartin, and he is the host of Mental Illness Happy Hour, which is one of my favorite podcasts, if not my favorite. I don't know. It's kind of a coin toss between that and Impact Theory. Favorite podcast of all time. I started listening to Paul's show over 7 years ago. And as many of you know, which I shared recently, I was able to be a guest on Paul's show, Mental Illness Happy Hour. And I asked him if he'd be willing to come on to Think Unbroken to share his mission, his message, his journey. And this really feels like a full circle moment for me. It's a moment I'm very proud of. It's a moment I'm very happy about. It's a moment that really feels fulfilling in a way because I've spent so much time and effort wanting to better my life. And it's amazing to me when I get to sit with someone I consider a mentor like Paul, who's got some years on me. But I can look at the path forward and I can go with intimacy issues and addiction issues and drug issues and all of the things that we face as humans, that we can still come through the other side. That we can, if we choose to keep going, we can find that thing that we're seeking. If we choose to be of service, we can better our lives. We can build self-esteem. We can build confidence, and we can find what we need. And this conversation is probably the most vulnerable conversation that I've had with anyone on the show. And it's really powerful, impactful to me, not only because I look up to Paul as a mentor and what he does in the podcasting space, but also because as I continue to go forward with Think Unbroken in my own personal journey, it's super important to me that I step further and deeper into vulnerability. And that's a conversation that we're going to have today. And Paul has, I'm not going to spoil it because I need you to listen. I want you to listen to the show. Paul has the greatest one-liner in the history of the world about vulnerability. And it's about 30 minutes in the episode. You're going to want to hear it. That's not the timestamp, so don't go to 30 minutes because I don't know if that's exactly when he said it or not. And so with that said, this episode, there's going to be some trigger warnings. Normally I don't throw them out here, but I'm going to today. I think it's important. So, you might get triggered. So make sure you do your self-care. Make sure you do whatever you need to do. Take care of yourself. But there is so much value in this episode, so much just grace and compassion and empathy and vulnerability that I think if you don't listen to this episode, you're going to really miss out. And this is one that I will personally be listening to again. So I'm very excited to get in, listen to this episode, my friends. And without further ado, let's get into the show. Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? Welcome to the Think Unbroken podcast. I'm your host, Michael Unbroken, and this podcast is about helping trauma survivors let go of the past, overcome their fear, discover their identity, become the hero of their own story, and ultimately to be unbroken. Our goal in company is to bring on guests and experts in the fields of mental, physical, and psychological health to help you overcome the past, to take back your power. And in this podcast, we are unedited and unfiltered, and we're going to give it to you real so that you can start to create massive change in your life. If you're curious about learning more outside the podcast, you can get a free copy of my book, Think Unbroken, at book.thinkunbroken.com. That's book.thinkunbroken.com, where you can get a copy of my #1 best-selling book, Think Unbroken, Understanding and Overcoming Childhood Trauma. The most important thing that you can ever do, my friends, is show up for yourself, and that's where you are today. And I appreciate you. I have massive gratitude for you. And without further ado, let's get into the show. Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? Hope that you're having an amazing day wherever you are in the world. I'm very excited to be back with you with another episode with my guest, Paul Gilmartin, who is the host of the Mental Illness Happy Hour podcast and one of my personal favorite people in the mental health space today. Paul, my friend, how are you?
I'm good, Michael. And it's nice to be on and to reconnect with you. If your listeners don't know, Michael was a guest on my podcast recently and crushed it. It was so good. It was so good. I appreciate
that.
Yeah.
You know, Paul, for those of the Unbroken Nation listening who don't know, it was a 7-year goal in the making for me to come and be a guest on your show. I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, one day I'm going to be on that show.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something to be said about diligence, right?
Yeah.
That said, Paul, for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about you, your background, and how you got to where you are today.
Well, my background is in performing, specifically stand-up and TV hosting. And I started doing the podcast in 2011 after I went off my meds and my depression fooled me and I got suicidal. And I thought, man, a podcast talking about mental health would be a good thing because at that time there really weren't any that I was aware of. I'm sure there were some here and there, but I just thought, having a background in comedy and knowing a lot of people from support groups and comedians who are a nutty bunch to begin with, I thought, maybe we could have something that would be compelling to listen to, and I could be a cheerleader for people getting professional help or opening up to friends. And so I've been doing this full time since 2011. I still perform occasionally. I do satire here and there, but that's pretty much it. I was raised one of two kids in the suburbs of Chicago. Was a theater major in college. Something in me snapped my junior year of college, and I went from pre-med to theater, which was a fun phone call home. But my parents were supportive, for all their flaws and mistakes. My parents have always been supportive of me pursuing a creative life.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think about too is, and I think this might be an interesting place for us to jump off this conversation, is, looking at the fact that, yes, our parents are very flawed, but there is sometimes that silver lining. Yeah. When you were growing up, I'd love, depending on your comfort level, for you to share a little bit of your experiences and ultimately looking at the trajectory of your life that have led you to where you are.
Well, a lot of this stuff that I think kind of left their scars or, issues that I struggle with, I was not really aware of as a kid. As you know, for a lot of kids, it's their normal. They don't know what's appropriate or inappropriate. My dad was a high-functioning alcoholic. I never saw him slur his words until I think I was in my mid-20s, and he came home from a business trip and was slightly slurring his words, but that surprised me when my mom told me when I was 18, "Oh yeah, your father's an alcoholic. He keeps vodka hidden around the house." And my father did make a suicide attempt when he bottomed out on alcohol. I think I was in my late 20s. My mom was and is somebody who doesn't have a lot of boundaries, and the term covert incest is kind of a broad term, and it's the incesting of a child that doesn't have to do with touching their genitals, but it's sexualizing them, spousifying them. Essentially the parent in a lot of ways putting their needs ahead of the child's, but objectifying the child. There's a lot of really inappropriate shit that something in my gut at the time told me it was wrong. And I remember consciously putting it out of my brain. Like when I was 8, my mom was still taking my temperature rectally. And I remember thinking, this feels really fucking weird. And I asked her, why are we still doing it this way? And she's like, because I'm afraid you're going to bite down on the thermometer. And I remember thinking, no, you're not. You're getting something out of this. But we just push shit out of our minds to survive. And there was a bunch of other stuff that, kind of fits that pattern. And it really wasn't until I got into a support group. I've been sober about 6 years from drugs and alcohol, but I got into a support group for my struggles with intimacy and trust. And lo and behold, I found out a lot of them were related to being raised in an environment that, while it was financially functioning and I knew I was loved, there was also some sick love and some abandonment issues. And so that's kind of been the struggle.
Yeah. And I appreciate your vulnerability, because I actually relate to that a ton. I've shared in depth all of my story, but a lot of it, which I have, is around that and looking at the emotional incest in my life from my mother, and the way that she parented, and the way that, between my brothers and I, it was always this like battle for attention and love and affection, which then would later on lead down to these support groups where I'm like, oh shit, that's why, because of the experience that I had when I was 7 and she was laying in bed naked next to me while like I'm watching a movie. I'm like, well, that seems weird, but I guess that's just my house. and being in these support groups was such this beautiful experience of really being able to understand, like, oh wait, shit, I'm not the only one who had crazy stuff happen as a child.
Yeah.
You mean there's more than just me here? And so I think that it's really powerful, Paul, that you'd be willing to share that. One of the things that I'm curious about is, so in this journey and as you're going through this, and this is a topic, and I'd love to dive into it a little bit more with you, that really is not discussed that frequently, and that is this idea about emotional incest. I
Hmm.
remember I read The Truth by Neil Strauss. I don't know if you've ever read this book before. It's probably, oh gosh, I want to say 8 years ago when I first read it, and he was talking about the like reality of emotional incest with the impact of his mother and his relationship. And I just picked up so many markers in that. And I thought to myself, it's very interesting that this is a conversation that especially men don't have. And as two men here in the conversation, and yes, of course, the Unbroken Nation is full of amazing women, and however you identify, that are listening to this show. But what you talked about, the impact of this on intimacy. And now I know something personal about you now being in a very healthy, happy relationship, but what's that journey been like for you,
Oof.
going through that discovery, learning intimacy, learning vulnerability?
A lot of two steps forward, one step back. Um, a lot of struggles to uh, be kind to myself, to practice self-care. Two of the things that I discovered in my support group that are common artifacts of experiencing incest is to struggle with self-care and to perfectionism, I would say, is the best way to put it. Feeling like if we don't do something right, we're not going to be loved, that we have to be everything to everybody, kind of an all or nothing, either I'm the life of the party or I've shut the door and I don't want anybody, bothering me. And same with sexuality, either really promiscuous or sometimes in a relationship completely shut down. Uh, those are some of the things. Difficulty with recognizing other people's boundaries, difficulty setting boundaries for myself, difficulty saying no, because the environment I was raised in, at 7, I became my mom's therapist, her breaking down and crying about her marriage and how she wanted to leave us because we were selfish bastards. And my dad was selfish. And I remember feeling like it was up to me to keep her happy. And I'm sure my sense of humor in some way was derived from that survival need to release tension in the family. And that being said, there were some great things about my mom. She was easily the most racially sensitive person in our neighborhood. She showed us how other people lived. She would take us to the inner city sometimes and say, everybody isn't as fortunate as we are to have what we have. And it wasn't to shame us. It was just to open our eyes to the greater world. She's always supported me doing creative things. So I think, like a lot of people, it's a really complicated relationship, and it's not all good or all bad. It's just mixed. And that can be one of the hurdles in recovering, is because there's a part of you that feels like, well, if I attach any negative feelings to the things I went through, I'm calling my mom a bad person. No, you're not. I had an epiphany one day that giving weight to what happened to me wasn't to punish my mom. It was to help me stop punishing myself.
It's powerful. When you stop punishing yourself, I want to go in this a little bit deeper, because I know that there are people listening right now who are like, holy shit, I've never thought that before. Because I think that is epiphany, that in epiphany that you only discover through doing the work.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how else those moments come. In that stop punishing yourself, how did that conversation with you intertwine in the way that it played out in all of the relationships of your life?
And before I answer that question, I want to plug a book about covert incest, and the term was coined by the author. His name is Kenneth Adams, and the book is called Silently Seduced. I highly recommend it to anybody who feels like they had a relationship with a parent that, you know, kind of crossed boundaries. So how did I begin to, let's start with, how did I begin to tolerate myself? You know, I remember very clearly, I was in a workshop for my support group, and we were going around the table. There was only like 6 of us, and we all happened to be sharing on our self-loathing. And if you looked at these people that I was in the room with, you know, they were attractive, successful, seemed to have their shit together. And I suddenly had this feeling that God hadn't just tolerated me my entire life, or the universe, whatever you want to call it, but maybe there was a path for me that had been predetermined because the universe, God, whatever, thought that I could fulfill this role well, and that I was special. Not better than anybody, just special in my own way. And I felt love from something out there in the universe come into my heart. And I started crying, like tears of joy, that I wasn't a mistake. I wasn't dirty. I wasn't broken. I was given a gift, and I could choose. And that gift was difficulty in childhood, and scars and struggles. And there could be a silver lining to it. I know you're a big believer in silver linings. And my job was to just keep plugging forward and to be kind to myself as I made mistakes along the way. You know, my recovery has been so ungraceful, so nonlinear. And those are opportunities for me to dust myself off and say, I'm going to do better next time. Let's not shame ourselves. Let's just make a note of where I stumbled to try to not do it again. Because another epiphany I had was nobody ever shamed themselves into being the person they wanted to be. And I used to think that shame was discipline and discipline was good. It's not. It's not. It can keep us frozen. I think shame is one of the most toxic emotions that we can feel, because it keeps us small, or even worse, we begin to project and to try to shame other people to feel bigger, to not feel small. I mean, look at social media. It's filled with people trying to shame each other so they can feel better. And I played that game for a while. And I just one day went, this is insane. Me trying to change people's view on Facebook, or, you know, cut them with some type of joke because it feels better for me to humiliate them. That's not going to make me feel better. But that's how I was dealing with shame. And one of the things that I found that I had to do is I had to surrender to the fact that I'm powerless over what other people do, say, and think, including what they say or think about me. And that's so hard.
Look, man, I think, like, no bullshit, I think that's the fucking secret to life. Like, I really, truly do, because until that moment, you're, in my experience, I won't put words in your mouth, but until the moment where I realized that I didn't have to give a shit about how people thought about who I am, is where I found freedom. Mm-hmm. Because the only thing I'd ever done as a kid was, I will bend at all angles to make sure that you like me.
Yeah.
Because it's safety. It's a defensive mechanism. A lot of that came from favoritism my mom showed. Like, she was like, oh, which boy behaves the best gets to go to dinner tonight or to the movie. Yeah. When we went to, like, the dollar movie, or to, like, Applebee's with a coupon. And that played this really devastating role in my life for a long time. And I tell my clients when I coach them, people listen to this show, the Unbroken Nation, they know, like, when you can get to that place in life where you stop giving a shit about people's opinion of you, everything becomes different. And for me, it was like a light bulb moment. And I'm wondering if that's how it felt for you too, if this was another epiphany in this journey.
Yeah, the one of the things that really helped me let go of what other people thought of me, obviously, was me being kinder to myself and viewing myself less negatively. Because, when somebody views us negatively and we haven't done any work on ourselves, they're just reconfirming our worst fears and thoughts about ourselves. And boy, the anger that ignites is so all-consuming. But once I was able in my support groups to work through.
We'll be right back, but I wanted to take a quick moment to tell you about the Think Unbroken 6-week trauma healing coaching program. If you go to coaching.thinkunbroken.com, that's coaching.thinkunbroken.com, you can sign up for the 6-week daily Think Unbroken trauma healing coaching program. In this program, we're going to go over the 6 principles of healing trauma, adaptation, understanding the impacts of trauma, how to become the hero of your own story, what to do next, and ultimately what it means to be unbroken. For more information about this 6-week coaching program, which you can download as an app on your phone and take with you everywhere, no matter where you are in the world, it's interactive. It's built about giving you practical tools that you can use in real time. And if you're ready for what's next in your life, go to coaching.thinkunbroken.com. Again, that's coaching.thinkunbroken.com. Now let's get back to the show.
My flaws, and it's not like my flaws have disappeared, but I'm more aware of them now. And I have tools to deal with when feelings come up that I used to, lash out at people or, get high to not deal with it. When those feelings come up nowadays, I reach for a tool that's more compassionate towards myself. So when I see people acting in a way that I want to judge, I try to remember, man, I'm just like them. I've made mistakes. I've hurt people. I'm no better than they are. I might just be at a different place on the path than them. And me having compassion for them doesn't mean I'm going to allow them into my life. But I don't have to hate them. I kind of view them as an abused dog that bites. It doesn't know any better. It's afraid. And there's nothing wrong with not going into the yard of the dog that bites. And my mom is, a dog that bites. And I had to cut contact with her. I have love for her, but I had to salvage my mental health. So did that answer your question?
Yeah. Well, I think that when I look at my experience, and again, just another incredible parallel that you and I have, I cut contact with my mother at 18. I just foresaw the future. I knew that if I did not, I would not. There's no fucking way I'd be talking to you today if my mother would have stayed in my life. Yeah. And I think that's one of the most empowering and sad experiences of my life, is being willing to do that. Because my mother had redeeming qualities, like my love for music and film, and my ability to do a lot of things that I do. Like, she would make me go sing in elementary pageants in front of all the kids as like the lead guy, and like that's played a role in me being on stages in front of tens of thousands of people. But that doesn't mean that she didn't do bad things. And to your point, which I would love to parlay for a second, I tell people all the time, I have fucked up. I will fuck up again. It's an inevitability, because we're having this thing called a human experience, but operating through kindness is everything. And if you can be the kind of person who is kind to yourself, then when those moments come, instead of destroying yourself, you do exactly what you just said, Paul. You go, what can I learn from this?
Yes. And who do I need to apologize to? Is there somebody I need to make something right with? That's been a big part of me feeling better about myself, has been, I need to call that person up and apologize because, I thought that joke was funny when I made fun of them in front of that group of people, but I could see that they were hurt when I did that. And that's something that wasn't even on my radar until, maybe 15 years ago, that I used my sense of humor aggressively and to make myself feel better than other people, and it's not like that it's bad to bust balls when you're with your friends, but when something's appropriate and when it's not. So being aware of my flaws and my tendencies and my bad coping mechanisms has been huge for me, not only to help me slowly become the person I want to be, but to have compassion for other people.
That's beautiful. And what I'm curious about is, so I look at these experiences that I have when you go, yeah, shit, I fucked up. I did the thing I said I wasn't going to do. I went and I made fun of the person I shouldn't have made fun of in a way that wasn't fun, right? Because I'm all about it. Like, if you can't talk shit, like, you're in trouble. Life is difficult. You got to be able to handle a little bit of it, right? But when you're like, you have that moment and you look at the experience of whatever it is that you've done, and you're like, fuck, this is outside of my values, outside of my moral character, outside of who it is that I'm as a person. Two parts to this. One, how do you reconcile that? And then two, what would you tell people who just destroy themselves when they fuck up?
Ask yourself, when you're just savaging yourself, ask yourself, would I say this to my best friend? Then why would you say it to yourself? You are uniquely positioned to be your own best friend throughout your life. Why would you be the meanest voice in your life? Because it is not going to discipline you. It's probably going to keep you acting from a place of fear rather than a place of abundance and peace. For me, I had to let go of all the coping mechanisms that I thought were going to bring me power, prestige, popularity, whatever you want to call it. They weren't working. And I had to, having to get help from my drinking and drugging, I found myself surrounded by like-minded people who wanted the best for me. And I felt unconditional love. No strings attached. Not with everybody in those groups, but with enough people that I felt a part of something bigger than myself. And it was then that I began to feel filled up, that I began to go, well, if these dozen people that I hang with all the time tell me they love me, help me when I need help, are there for me, why can't I do that for myself? And I also had to start being helpful to other people. That really, there's a saying I'm sure you've heard in support groups: if you want to improve your self-esteem, do esteemable acts. One of my friends has a saying: service begins where convenience ends. But the addict part of my brain never wants to be of service. I want to sit by myself and think about myself, look into my broken crystal ball and try to predict the future so that I can have enough money to survive.
Yeah. The addict part of me likes to sit on the couch, get stoned, and play video games nonstop.
Yeah.
Nonstop. There's nothing more fun. Here's what's really funny is, like, for a long time, and I even kind of like tossed the coin on how I feel about this, going, okay, what does addiction really mean? And am I an addict? And looking at my life and having the ebb and flows, but like legit being addicted to video games as a kid and in my teens and in my early 20s, where there was a game. Oh my God, I'm gonna put this out here. There's a game called Diablo 2 that came out in, I think, 2003. By the time that I stopped playing that, it's one of the only video games I played for almost a decade straight. By the time I finished playing it, I had logged over 1,400 hours. 1,400 hours. And that's the thing that's so fascinating, because when you make the decision and the declaration to create change in your life, inevitably over time, change will come. Now, if I sit down and play a video game, like I can maybe play for like 20 minutes and I'm bored out of my mind, but it took this act of service, right? Despite the addiction, despite not wanting to do it, me showing up every day, being committed to conversations like this, to being of value to the world, that changed who I am today. One of the things I want to dive in a little bit deeper with you that you said that I actually kind of want to push you on a little bit, just in terms of language, to pull something out here. You said that you found yourself with these group of empowering people. What I believe, Paul, is that you put yourself in those groups. I feel like you didn't get miracled into them.
Right. I think there's a part of me that, because it feels like such a perfect fit, that there is kind of a miracle, predestiny, whatever you want to call it. I just wanted to not kill myself. That's how low my bar was for, going and getting help for my drinking and drugging. I just knew I was going to kill myself, either through suicide or, ruining my life. So one of the keys was to progress and to help myself. I had to learn how to get vulnerable. I had to be willing to talk about the ugly parts of me, the things I was going to take to the grave, the womanizing, the cheating on my then wife, things that I felt shame about. And that helped me realize that what people really appreciate in each other is truth. They're not looking for perfection. They're looking for truth and mutual respect. Yeah. And I found it there. I found truth and laughter. And it's like, that's my fucking drug. And I never OD on truth and laughter.
And I will say this, as someone who has listened to hundreds of episodes of your podcast, like I know that to be true. I look at my life and my experiences, and so many of the people who have reached out to me over the years, so many people I've coached, so many people who are like trying to make their life better. And there always seems to be this like moment of, I want to call it clarity. And what I mean by that, it's kind of that moment of that lead up to before the worst case scenario happens, where you shift your life, dare I call it the rock bottom. What happened in your life that caused you to like, let me preface it with this. And if I'm wrong, please. I believe that subconsciously we all know what we're supposed to be doing. However, it takes a catalyst or a stimulus for us to actually move towards what that thing was or is. And so what I'd love to know, Paul, is like, did you have that moment? Was there a catalyst for massive change in your life? And what has been the biggest difference about the understanding of who you believe you are since that moment?
Well, the original catalyst was not wanting to commit suicide. I could see that my life on paper was great. I was hosting this TV show. I was making good money. I had time to spend it. I had my health, my physical health, my friends. Why was I thinking about killing myself 50 times a day? Well, I can look back now and say it's because my spirit was dead, but because all I cared about was myself. I wasn't feeding my spirit. The second epiphany or launching point was the fear of living the rest of my life without knowing true intimacy in a relationship. I could have intimacy in platonic relationships with people, but when it came to romantic relationships, you can only get so close. And I was able to realize, it's probably related to my mom overwhelming me with her needs and a fear of being suffocated. And I learned that, well, that the tool isn't putting up an iron wall to keep you away from everybody. It's getting better at understanding who you open the door for. and how much you open the door. And it's a lot of trial and error. And so today I don't allow toxic people in my life. And that's been huge for me. So those were the two big catalysts in changing. But I had to be looking into a deep, dark hole to be willing to do the work to do that, because I don't like doing work. And I don't like going back into the icky memories, the icky feelings, the shame of ways that I've acted. But it's been necessary for me to begin to put together a little bit of humility and to be willing to do the reading and the writing, and to read books a therapist suggests, to share my secrets with somebody in my support group.
In that, I hear massive vulnerability. And I would argue that it's probably the most important trait that one develops. I will say that I do not believe it's inherent to people who come from traumatic backgrounds.
No, but telling people that come from trauma to be vulnerable is like saying to a person that's just run out of a burning building, the very thing you need is back in that burning building.
That is the greatest fucking analogy I've ever heard in my life. Yes, you're spot on, Paul. For the people who are listening to this and they're just like besides themselves in this moment, because I'm one of them in real time having this conversation, and they're like, okay, what do I do? Like, what do I really do? Like, I hear these guys, they're talking. This has gone through my head a million times. I'm fucking suicidal. Life feels like a disaster. Like, what do they do, Paul? Where do you start?
Well, if you are actively suicidal and you feel like you're making a plan or on the verge of making a plan, please call the suicide hotline. Do not reach out to a non-professional as your sole source of support, because you won't get the full help that you need. And it's not fair to them to feel like they've got to keep you alive. That's a lot to put on somebody. That doesn't mean you're a burden. It just means that you deserve a larger support network. The very thing that you struggle over and the thing that you want to hide is probably the very thing that is going to connect you to your next group of close friends. And there is trial and error in it. What's really important is to just keep going, to just keep trying different things. I have tried so many things in the last 20 years. I've probably tried 25 different meds. My psychiatrist, finally, we were able to dial in a combination of meds that works for me. This is the first fall in God knows how long that my depression hasn't felt like Elvis entering a stadium. The hope is so hard when you've been kicked in the teeth a lot of times, when you've had failure after failure after failure. But being around as long as I've been, I'm almost 60, I'm 59 years old. I can tell you the greatest things in my life wouldn't have happened if I hadn't experienced failure previous to it.
Yeah. And I'm right there with you. And every time I fail, I just look at my life and go, cool, I learned a lesson. And I've tried all the modalities. You name it, I've tried it. I spent all the money. I did all the things. And I am going to wholeheartedly agree with you that if you can do that thing, whatever it is that you need to do to give yourself the strength to face your fear of just going one more day, tomorrow might be the day everything's different. Like Sharon Lecter, who is an entrepreneur, she co-wrote multiple books, but she has a book called 3 Feet from Gold. And the idea of that book is very simple. You might be 3 feet from that thing that you've always wanted. One more day, one more minute, one more action. And I think that's the reality of life. Like if you find that reason to keep going, which for me has been being of service, right? You find that thing, being a better brother, being a better communicator, a leader, a speaker, all those things. And for you, it may be, being a better mom, being the best entrepreneur or business owner, or whatever that thing is. But finding that reason to hold on will forever change everything for you. And as someone who's attempted suicide myself, I can tell you right now, like the greatest moment of my life was like being able to come through the other side of that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's not fucking hard, because it's hard. Some days suck. Some days I don't want to do this. Some days I want to lay in bed and fucking eat chocolate cake and do nothing. Yeah. But I ask myself, who do I need to be today? And if I were a person who's kind to myself, what would I need to do?
One of the reasons why, and thank you for sharing that, and I agree wholeheartedly. And one of the things that I would have never imagined I would get out of support groups is other people seeing the change in me before I could see it myself, and them helping me to see myself through their eyes. A psychiatrist, after I cut contact with my mom, which is a very long process and not simple, and the most painful thing I've probably ever been through. My psychiatrist said to me, I just want to commend you on looking into the jaws of the monster. He said, so many people run from that monster, the monster of childhood trauma, without ever stopping to heal. Your feelings won't kill you, but running from them might.
Yeah, they might. And so I hope that for folks listening, you're willing to step into what's next in your life, because anything is fucking possible. I promise you, as a dude sitting here having this conversation, I know it to be true. And I don't believe I'm in any way special. I just believe that if I keep going, I will get to where I want to go. Yeah. Paul, this conversation has been absolutely incredible, my friend. Before I ask you my last question, can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, the podcast is called The Mental Illness Happy Hour, and the website for it is mentalpod.com. And mentalpod is also the social media handle you can follow me at on Twitter and Instagram.
Brilliant. And of course, we'll put all those links in the show notes. Personally, just a little bit of shout out. It is my favorite mental health show, so I am being biased. But it is a phenomenal show. You have amazing guests with amazing stories. Paul, my last question for you, my friend. What does it mean to you to be unbroken?
To keep seeking. Because I used to think of myself as broken, and I now think of myself as scarred, wounded, and we can heal. I believe that we can heal, because if I think of things as broken, then what's the point of putting effort in? And it's in the process of seeking that I found not only the answers to questions that I had, but questions that I didn't even know I had.
It's very beautiful. And as Hemingway said, life breaks many of us, but for some of us, we're stronger in the broken places.
Yeah,
Paul, thank you for being here. Unbroken Nation, thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, tell a friend. And until next time, my friends, be
unbroken. I'll see ya.
Unbroken Nation, hope that you just got a tremendous amount of value from today's episode. I want to know what you think. Please do me a favor and review, rate, and share the episode with 3 friends on social media today. It would mean the world if you did, because ultimately at the end of the day, creating community and connection is how we heal generational trauma in the world. And I need your help to do that, Unbroken Nation. So if you're on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you are, please like, comment, share, review. I want to know not only what you like about the show, but how I can make the show better, how I can make this further about helping you on your healing journey. So do me a favor, and when you do, shoot me a screenshot of you making the review to my DM at Michael Unbroken on Instagram, so that I can have a conversation with you, say hi, and more importantly, so I can share it with the Unbroken Nation. Thank you so much, my friend. Hey, my friends, we will be right back to the show. But I have a question for you. Are you struggling with the impact of childhood trauma? Well, know that you're not alone. I'm here to let you know that I'm starting a brand new weekly coaching group that includes a year of live coaching, accountability, support, habit and goal setting, and more. I'm starting a waitlist for the group right now, and I'm only taking a handful of people. And I'll let you know that through this personalized coaching, we'll work together to help you understand how your childhood trauma has shaped your beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and will help you create a roadmap for healing and growth. Right now, you can schedule an absolutely free coaching session with me and get put on the wait list if you go to thinkunbroken.com. My friends, it's your time to turn your trauma into triumph, breakdowns into breakthroughs, and become the hero of your own story. And I'm here to support you in doing that. Just go to thinkunbroken.com to register for a free coaching call with me and to get put on the wait list for the brand new weekly coaching program.